Wow. I'm Barry Cooper. I'm not a beekeeper. And as you can see, I don't like hiking. But I'm I'm the executive director and founder of an organization called the Bro Experience, stands for Brothers Redefining Opportunity. And I train in cognitive behavior therapy.
And that's why we have you tonight. Dr. Brandon Allen, say what you do, please.
I am a pastor in Harlem, USA, and I'm also a supervisor for foster care and adoption in the city as well.
I am a math teacher at A-Tech High School, Algebra 1, and I love math.
I am a healthcare technology senior associate, but I'm also a youth minister at Bedford Central Presbyterian Church.
Awesome.
And I am a professor at Columbia University.
All right, come on, put your hands together for these people, these panelists that's here. And I'm so excited for each and every one of you as we're having this hard conversation tonight. And again, now, the other thing that we're going to ask that you do, if you have a cell phone that looks like this is a cell phone, we're going to ask that you turn down your volume because we are live on Facebook and live on YouTube. If you want to know where, it's on my page. It's Dave K. Allen on Facebook and Dr. Dave K. Allen on YouTube. So you can find us there. All right. Now, tonight, this is sponsored by Epic Village. The sponsors of this tonight is Epic Village, God Squad, the OPHC, which is a part of the Mayor's Hate Crime Unit, and also David Kelvin, Inc., which is my consulting company that I run. All right, so Mr. Thomas, I want to acknowledge some legends within the community of Crown. Mr. Thomas, stand up so we may acknowledge you. And Mr. Thomas, and would you please thank him? And yeah, stand up, and Sonia, stand up. And these are representatives of the community board, right? Community Council of the 77 precincts, and they're here tonight. So put your hands there for them. Just something about Rabbi Bob. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Rabbi Bob was one of the reasons I end up in Israel in 2022. And so, but he is an avid traveler to Israel and an avid community leader. And he does work with JCRC of New York. And he does so many other things. And we welcome him tonight. Now, yes, thank you so much. All right. Is everyone ready? All right. So tonight, as I was speaking to one of the rabbis who's here, in the last few weeks, I've got a lot of questions. And a lot of people is calling me, asking me, why am I having this conversation tonight? And the majority of the people who are calling me and asking me why was from the Jewish community. They want to know why we're having it. And it was more like are you an authority in speaking on this subject tonight? And I said, knowing me, if y'all know me, I said what? Absolutely. Because hate is hate. Whether it's anti-Semitism or whether it's black on black, hate, or it's still hate. All right? And so tonight, as we look towards the topic of demystifying the hate, we want to understand and get clarity from the panelists and from you. Why is the hate rising? What is your understanding of why it's happening? And I want us to be respectful, and I want the panelists to share tonight why, from your own world, of why you see it's rising. And that's going to be the first question that we're going to ask tonight. Tonight we're going to keep it straight an hour. And we're going to take some questions from the crowd also. But we really want to bring this to the front. Is that okay, everyone? Is that okay? Now, I like things that are alive. So everybody say yes. All right, Danny, you're holding the mic. You're the first. Why do you think this is rising? Because you're with Columbia. No, I'm putting you on the spot now. Don't worry about it. But why do you feel, is this more anti-Semitism or is this hate in general? Y'all got the question? Is this more anti-Semitism Or is this hate in general? Because anti-Semitism is still hate. But is this a larger narrative of hate? Everybody got that? All right, let's go.
Wow. Well, I guess I'm not totally sure what this is. Because I do think anti-Semitism is on the rise. That is objectively clear. All sorts of anti-Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian rhetoric is also on the rise. And Columbia, where I teach, has seen protests and then an unbelievably strong anti-free speech crackdown against protests in the most recent wave. So beginning really like mid-April, but there have been protests and issues really ongoing, but particularly since October 7th of last year when Hamas attacked Israel. I think that there have always been cases of higher rates of anti-Semitism when Israel's at war, and in particular when Israel's at war and when civilians are high among the death toll, as is true now at an unprecedented rate. I think the numbers are somewhere around 32,000 as of today, people killed, including civilians in Gaza. And there have been spikes in anti-Semitic attacks of students on campus. There have been all sorts of issues. I think there's also an overwhelming perception on campus.
You're doing good. Take your time. Take your time. I love this. Go on.
The promise you've given me a microphone, and now I'm never going to give it away. I'm a professor. This is like literally what I live for. I think that there's a perception of fear, and I think we've bred a climate of fear, and I think we've also introduced now the police, which have bred, significantly expanded the climate of fear. And I think that has really exacerbated what was already a political issue that has spiraled into targeting particular groups into something that is now just a general chaotic situation. So I do think a lot of things have gone into this, but I think bad responses from university administration have also really exacerbated things.
Excellent. Just come on, put your hands together for that. That was, you hit on something I was going to speak about later, which is now the introduction, not just of the police, it's called the riot squad.
Oh yeah.
Right? So for those who don't know, the police, the regular police is one thing, but when the riot squad comes in, it's a whole different scenario. Yeah. All right? So, go on.
Yes, I think that it's an intersection of, like Danny said, fear, but also when you have fear, misunderstanding, bias, misdirected opportunity, that's when we see what's happening now. Understanding that on a college campus, for often many people, especially when they travel and go to a new space, that is the first time they are able to express ideas. That is the first time they're able to learn new ideas outside of the household that they grew up in, but also in some cases, also grow the ideas that they've learned in their household. So when you have the intersectionality of freedom, but also policing and also guarding and also convicting and constraining, then you end up in situations where you just have over-expression, you have misdirected expression, you have just people creating a narrative that they believe to be true and imposing it on another person without respect of where they come from, their beliefs, their ideas, and then we have instances of hate. And when there aren't tables to have conversation, there aren't opportunities and programs to learn from one another, build and respect each other's ideas, then you end up with forms of anti-Semitism which fall under the umbrella of hate. So it is also this microcosm, this baby, pretty much in some cases, that's had the opportunity to grow without the proper knowledge, without the proper foundation, and is something that in many cases is popping up in multiple places because the charge is being placed out there, but the charge is not in the hands of often responsible spaces and individuals. And then you end up with misunderstood and misdirected instances leading to the riot squad having to come in.
Right. I love what you said about the charge.
Yeah.
The question is, who's given the charge?
The media.
The media.
Yeah. Because in some cases, I do believe that the media is, and of course, that's not the only source, but it plays a heavy part. Right. If you're only seeing one version of the news, you're only understanding one side of the story, you are now running with a mantle that's not fully true. And when you are running with that mantle, with that level of misunderstanding, with that level of bias, with only seeing aggression and all those things, then you're running with the wrong information. And then you end up with poor decisions, poor outcomes, and just a fostered instance of misunderstanding.
I love what you said, because a rabbi friend of mine would say that it depends on which news you're watching. He will say that the Jewish community will watch the Jewish news. The black community will watch the black news. And so whichever one is your preference, that's where you will get the hypodermic needle of the media that's feeding you, and you make your decisions from there. And then it comes back to what you originally said, which is the charge, right? And then who's been influenced from the charge? Because sometimes, which we'll cover later, a lot of the wrong influencers is ahead of the charge. All right, go on, Miss Sydney.
Yes, I just want to
Come on, put your hands together for that.
I just want to piggyback off of what Shannon just stated. I believe that social media plays a major factor in the way how people are responding. And I think that social media plays a role in the way that it's created division amongst communities. And like, if they're only seeing
Powerful. Yes.
one perspective, it's the way how they project onto the world. And I think that what's happening is people have, the way they show up, they're using violence because they don't feel heard. So I think that that's a major thing. So the unheard voices are showing their violence, and I believe that people believe violence is the answer.
The unheard. Who consists of the unheard?
Marginalized groups.
Marginalized. Are y'all hearing this?
Yeah.
All right. So y'all not gonna clap for Sydney now? All right. Come on, Brandon and Alec. Brandon and myself has, except for one letter, which is B. I'm Dave K. Allen, and he is Brandon K. Allen. Same, not the same mother, not the same father, but go on, Brandon, Dr. Brandon.
I like what you said. Who's giving the charge, and I often have wondered who's teaching this hate. We are not born to hate. We're not born to show hatred towards others. Grandma used to say, charity begins at home. Amen, somebody? And so who's teaching it? And who's allowing it to continue to flourish on our campuses, in our communities, in our grocery stores, on the train and on the bus, wherever we go? Who's teaching it and who's allowing it to continue to flourish is a question that I continue to ask myself daily.
Well, how do we go about, and I really appreciate you saying that, about who's teaching it. How do we begin to literally find out who is the teacher and the student? Because the hate is growing. So they're off, if it's growing from different communities and it's growing exponentially, that means that someone is teaching, that a teacher is teaching a teacher. Someone is equipping someone else to teach. Y'all see what I'm saying? And it's multiplying in such weird, in so many ways that we have to go back and find out, okay, where is the original root of, and who is the original teacher? And how do we begin to stop it, right? All right, thank you for that. Come on, everybody, put your hands together. Come on, encourage our panelists. All right.
Again, my name is Brittany. I'm saying my name again because I forget everybody else's name. I'm so sorry. So there's a few things that I think my co-panelists have already talked about that I think is really wonderful. But I also want to make sure that I'm honest here. I'm a staff member at Barnard College, and so fellow Columbia person over there. There's a few things. So we talked about the media's role in, spreading certain ideas. I think it's important to recognize that media is influenced by advertising, and those who have money and who have the power to pay for what's on the media is really what's pushing what's on the media. Those who have power have the opportunity to share what's on media, and we cannot take that responsibility away from them. We do have powerful journalists out there that are doing the work that are doing the investigations, that are on the streets, that are talking to students or to advocates or those who are organizing, and they're putting that information out there, but they don't have as much money, they don't have as much influence, and there are people who are doing the work. They are trying to share the truth. And something that was really interesting to me, kind of watching the things play out on Columbia's campus, is one day I went on Columbia's campus. Those of you who don't know, Barnard is right next door, like right across the street from Columbia's campus. And when the encampment started, there was a lot of challenges on campus. A lot of students that I was speaking to were crying during advising meetings and things like that. And what I was watching on the news was like, oh, it's all this violence and this is happening and this is happening. And I went on the campus and it was quiet. The encampment was peaceful. The students were communing with one another. They were dancing. And then I'm looking on the media, and these are people who are all over the world just saying things that weren't true. And so, I think about how money influences what's said on the media. And to get those ratings up, we have to be sensational. We have to say things that will get people riled up. And to someone else's point, social media also plays a huge role too. This is how people are organizing on either end, in the middle, sharing information. And there's this interesting book called #Republic. And in this book, the author discusses how silos are created on social media. People create these spaces where they're just kind of like amening each other no matter what they're saying. So like, I feel this way, I feel marginalized, like you said, or I feel like my needs are not met, or I'm being hated against. And so these people get validated, even if they're not necessarily right or wrong or whatever the case is, but they create these communities that support their ideas, and therefore they grow. And so this can happen with hate, it can happen with truth, it can happen with anything. And the power of the media is really strong, and we have to make sure that we pay attention to that and support good media, good journalists, good folks that are doing the work out there.
Come on, thank you. I had a quick question, and thank you for sharing that. Dan, was it your same experience, as she said, that I saw you bopping your head, that what you're seeing on the news versus what you see in actuality was two different things? Is that, I saw you bopping your head.
It has been. I mean, so I first want to say that there's been incredible media coverage from Columbia student journalists and Barnard student journalists. Columbia Spectator, which is a student newspaper, has done amazing work, as is the radio station. It was disconcerting to see how much images of violence were being broadcast about Columbia when I was literally sitting on campus drinking a coffee, talking to students outside. Like, it's not, I think there have, and that's not to say that there haven't been real issues, and absolutely there have been instances of anti-Semitism and physical violence between people. That has not been, I mean, I teach in the mornings, so I'm home by 2 p.m., but like, campus has been eerie, but campus was not physically threatening. And I think talking to a lot of Jewish students who are about a quarter of Columbia's population, many of them feel physically unsafe because of not only the encampment, which is part of it, but because the encampments have drawn huge numbers of outside protesters who are standing outside of the gates of the campus and saying wildly anti-Semitic, wild Islamophobic things, and then counter-protesters who are coming and screaming that all the encampment people are Hamas. And that has brought a level of rhetoric and has amplified the rhetoric to the point that students are afraid to walk between Barnard and Columbia, which is literally across Broadway, when on either campus, it's just like cherry blossoms.
Wow, phenomenal. You can hold that mic. Barry, oof.
Yeah, so I've been digesting all of the great thoughts, and I'm over here kind of like putting notes down, because sometimes the questions can be so loaded that, we could lose sight. But things that popped out, which inform my kind of like consensus, is that, perspective, so where we get our information from, is very vital. Political and economical interests. So, we have political leaders who have folks who have a certain interest in the seat that they are incumbents of. Those things dictate message, which then informs the perspective. If we voted for that person, then we tend to believe what that individual is saying, whether it's true or not. And then going back to this idea of where we don't know where hurt starts from, it does start in the household. Bias starts in the household. So if you're in the house, and I remember growing up, and we're gonna hold all of ourselves accountable, we all done it. You pass Crown Heights, that's the Jewish neighborhood, right? Like, so if you're a young person and you're hearing that information, once you see them come into your community, you're like, what in the hell is this? And vice versa, when they put images out of young men of color being hyper-masculine when that's not the totality of who we are. So if we really want to kind of like pull back the layers of if it's anti-Semitic, like anti-Semitic, it's just a tool, right? Like you are now using negative language towards an individual based on a false perception that you have that is rooted in economical interests. Understand that, right? Like poor people, there's a lot of us, and there's a lower number of people who have the money, but that literally like pushes the global messaging, and we cannot lose sight of that, right? And I think it's when we start to understand that when the media comes in, right, like they are being dictated to put forth a certain message, we have to then bring our children back, and inside of the household, Pastor, like we have to start to make change. Like my daughter's getting ready to go to Syracuse. We are having like large conversations around what this means for her. And I'm like, listen, not everybody hates you, right? Like that's not the world that you're living in. Do you live in a system that dictates how black and brown folks are dealt with? Absolutely, and this is how you maneuver through. So I think it's like we have to bring it back to our villages, and then communities that are affluent, and I think I was talking to the rabbi the first time we had our group conversation, you cannot be isolated. You can't, and you can't wait until our communities become interested to you, saying, oh, I like that brown, so I like that, and knowing that we have been struggling to keep communities together for a long time without having the resources. If you want to come in, don't come in at night, come in at the daytime, shake our hands so that way we can break bread together. Because a lot of times what happens is that when things like this in a whole nother country happens, that's why it's able to explode, because we think that we isolated and we're really not. Like we very much feel the pain and the hate each and every day, especially with these amazing, hateful cell phones. That's my thought.
Come on, put your hands together for that. That was outstanding. The part about you have to have the conversations that begins at home. And, just going back to how I started this, one of the questions that was asked to me is like, Dr. Allen, why are you having this conversation when it's not a black and brown, it's not a black people conversation, which I found very offensive personally. This is much bigger than black and brown. Because at the end of it, it's still hate, right? And so, but I believe, Barry, that part of the larger issue is that too many of our communities that we try to interact with are having their own isolated conversations on who may be the enemy and who's not the enemy, right? And so in speaking to some of my Palestinian friends, they would say to me that, oh, Dave, you gotta look at the numbers of how many people are killed, 34,000 versus this number, right? And I'm going like, let's have the conversation then. And they don't want to meet in the same room. And I encouraged them. Today was a great day. Then I got all these conversations, all these texts, and I said to the Jewish community, hey, we're having this conversation. Would you like to be a part of it? I reached out. Hey, can we get some young rabbis? And there's restrictions on that too. And from what they're telling me, and I'm looking at how do we bridge the gap between each of our communities to say that we can build bridges so that these conversations, the ideology of what hatred is in one community versus the other community can be minimalized. And so I'm going to pass this to someone from the crowd. Would someone like to answer that for us?
Could you repeat the question?
Or a panelist.
You know,
I mean, it makes me think of like Bloods and Crips in the black community, right? Once somebody dies, and like people start to, and this is, in CBT what it's taught is like, once a person has a traumatic experience, and that experience like starts to inform how they feel, then they're gonna respond to the world as savage. So when we are operating in spaces where weapons are our communication tools, then Pastor, we might as well pack this room up. And I don't want to be cynical, but I just gotta honestly just speak my truth. We gotta shut the lights off because there is no talking, right? Because if you think about this, and I don't want to speak for what's happening, I just want to be saying, but just thinking about my community, you got to start younger. You have to be intentional about cultivating. We have to operate as cathedral builders, and what I mean by that is understanding that what the ground that you start to lay, you may not ever see what it can truly be, but it's not about you, right? It's about what we pour in, and then making sure that we leave somebody there to pour some more, because it's going to take more. It's going to take a lifetime.
I love that. Let me ask the panelists, and then we'll move it. Now, y'all know y'all don't have to be afraid. What is the government's responsibility when it comes to the word hate and to this whole narrative that's happening? What is the government's responsibility to the people? And who is the burden of responsibility on? Y'all understand the question? You're fine. You can go.
Before I answer that question, I just want to say that I think it's really important to understand that any oppressed person, any people that are oppressed, we are all in the same struggle. And I've learned that from our, civil rights leaders. Angela Davis has always been, straightforward with that. It's one struggle. And if it's happening a billion miles away, but there's oppressed people, and I'm an oppressed person, that is my struggle too. And it is my responsibility to do as much as I can, wherever I can, speak at an event that I don't feel qualified to speak on, or to write an article, or to talk, or to whatever the case is. It is our responsibility at all times to present or represent the people that are also oppressed. Now, as far as the government's responsibility, I have weird feelings about that. Actually, I have so many jobs. One of my jobs, I actually work for an elected official as well. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this elected official is that she is very much focused on creating legislation that protects oppressed people. And, we live in a particular society that was founded on the oppression of Black people and brown people and indigenous people. And part of the work that we do is to decolonize our society as much as possible and to create protections that will ensure our safety as far and long as we can. But we see that this is already being dismantled. It's a weak system. And so what we have to do is start in our homes. We go to our local elected officials because that is very important. There's an election coming up, and I think in this particular district, you must go to the primaries. Everybody needs to do that. Every election you can, go and vote. Work with your pastors and your local leaders and your advocates. It's a big problem, and it's a centuries-old problem. And the best we can do is share our stories with one another. We work with one another. We see that it's a common struggle. Crown Heights is a beautiful place because particularly where I live, I can go get some kosher food and I can also go get a Jamaican patty. And they're like 2 blocks away from each other. And the wonderful thing about that is we live in one of the most diverse places in the world. And so we have this opportunity to work together and to be on each other's panels and be on each other's boards and be in each other's churches or synagogues or wherever we are. And this is how we exchange and learn from one another. So I didn't answer your question about the government, but
that was awesome. Come on, put your hands together for her. I like when you said, it starts with the writing these legislatures, right? And I also, what I would love you if you had expounded upon was that, in as much as we are different communities, especially between the Jewish community and the Black community, we have things in common, oppression in common, okay? And I mean, you could go back to the book of Exodus and you see that's a whole 400 years of oppression. Black people, y'all know in your history, how long were we in oppression? We're still in oppression as far as I come. Okay? And so we still, but the thing about it is that we are not, so the level, I should say, but we should be working together. That's what I'm saying? Together. It's not happening. And I think the communication that's happening in both households, let me just say, or maybe in a Palestinian household, in a Jewish household, and in the black household, it is three different conversations. And we probably see the world in three different ways. And what I'm trying to find is that commonality. Is there a commonality that can let us say, let's build the bridge? Y'all got that? What is that common denominator between us? Don't tell me we're all humans. I don't want to hear that. I mean, what is the common denominator that can say, all right, we see the hate that's rising on the college campuses. We see it's rising around. Before October the 7th, there was hate. Y'all know hate was rising drastically before October the 7th. It was rising. It's still rising, just now much more. So the thing is, how do we begin, Barry, to heal our communities? Then how do we begin to heal our communities? How do we begin to speak to the students and say, yes, the students are afraid on these college campuses. Yes, they're afraid, right? That's especially the Jewish students. We get that. But I think that to another narrative, the Palestinian kids are also afraid. But we don't hear much about that. No. Come on, y'all talk back to me, as we will say in church. All right? So, come on. All right.
I think...
Sydney, you're next. Then go, and then Sydney will go.
I think, building on what both of you have said, I think the common denominator is actually trauma. Like, I think that this is a situation in which we have a great deal of trauma across the board. And I think one of the things that I know I have found difficult in the months since October 7th, but also over time and in my own family, I'm Jewish, my family are French-Algerian Jews who came to the US during the Second World War, who fled France. And I think that trauma was a thing that I was raised with in a really visceral way. I grew up around people with numbers on their arms from concentration camps, as did many, many Jews of my generation. And I think after October 7th, which was the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust, there was an unbelievable trauma response among the Jewish community. And very, very quickly, a kind of counter-narrative around decolonization and Palestinian liberation, and that's not to say that any of those are wrong. It was just that I think a lot of members of the Jewish community and members of my own family felt that their trauma was ignored or minimized or just jumped through in order to have a larger conversation. And I think that that has been true of Palestinian. Today is Nakba Day, which is the 76th anniversary of the displacement of the displacement of Palestinians in 1948. I think ways in which we mark or don't mark that has been a real sort of relationship about trauma. Jews and Palestinians have a very, very, very shared history of displacement. And
did y'all just hear what he just said? All right. And last week, from what one rabbi told me, was something that related to the Holocaust.
Yep, Holocaust, one of the Holocaust Memorial Days, as well as a Jewish sort of Memorial Day in Israel as well. And I think these celebrations, and these are both very solemn and celebratory moments, times to look back and times to look forward. I think there are times that we don't always take for the traumatic experiences that we have had, and we don't spend enough time with ourselves. We do not spend enough time with our therapists. And I think that really the common denominator behind a lot of this is not human nature, it's really trauma, and it's unprocessed trauma that we are taking out on one another.
Wow, Sydney.
And that's what I wanted to touch base on, the trauma, and I just believe like there's a saying, hurt people, and I think that it's just a generational thing that is occurring amongst each of the communities. And the biggest thing for me is forgiveness. How do we seek forgiveness? How do we seek redemption? And I think that because of those two things, this is the result of what we're seeing. Yeah.
And I'd like to add to that, when we hold on to the trauma, eventually it has to leave, and sometimes, or most times, it leaves in the form of hatred. with us hurting our brothers and sisters. And I think you asked the question, do we depend on the government, or who do we depend on?
Role in all of this in helping the
Right.
people.
What is the government role? I'm not sure what the government role is. I don't even know if the government is doing a damn thing about it. But I would say that we as a people ought to be responsible for policing our own people, for policing our own communities, spending time with our therapists, working out our issues so that we won't continue to push the hatred agenda.
Excellent, excellent. Barry, you look like you're thinking. Barry's in deep contemplation. Barry, before you answer, Barry, let me.
Hold on, before you throw the curveball at me, because I got like a lot I'm processing.
I see
And I'm a very
process.
passionate person, but
right.
it's just like, and we just gotta like let our egos go, right? Like just think about how we're asking the question of like the government's responsibility. We are the government. Like we gotta stop losing sight that when you vote, if you cast a ballot and then that's all you do, and that elected official don't get back to you or you don't call your elected official, that's your fault. That person works for you. That is your seat, for us, by us, for the people, by the people. We need to like understand that. And our Jewish brothers and sisters, and I think that even our Palestinian brothers and sisters, they understand that. And for our people in particular, I think the reason why the conversations in the households are different because we are still oppressed. We are still trying to get above water to figure out how to protest in a way that is effective because we don't understand that we are the very fabric of this Western civilization. But I guess I want to throw a question back. Like, and we have some brothers from that are Jewish brothers in the room. You know, like when I go down Eastern Parkway, y'all got your own schools. Every house, every apartment building, everybody lives in. And I'll be like, wow, I wish we could have that. But ain't no bank in this side of town going to give me a loan to actually have that. So my question is would we do a beta test where we allow 5 young men of color, 5 Jewish young boys, 5 Palestinian, 5 Caucasian young men to all go to school together and learn together? And let's do that for 10 years. Let's do a beta test to see if within 10 years, what type of friendships would they create, what type of brotherhood would they create, and then give them a segment of the community to then go flourish. And then that's how you change. But if we keep having these conversations and throw out all of these amazing dynamic words without just doing the simple basic things, I call it the Mr. Miyagi effect. It's like, yo, wax on, wax off. It's that simple. Bring people together, coalesce, be intentional about how we are cultivating the change, give some isolation or AKA protection to those individuals so that way they can grow up and then they can be the new regime of what joy, love, and community really looks like. Because as a black man, and I grew up on Lexington and Marcus Garvey, whenever we have a barbecue and it's white folk in our neighborhood, we invite them to the barbecue. Y'all can get the fried chicken too until y'all do something crazy. And we got to let you know that this is our community, but we are a people of love, joy, and like collective togetherness. So, and that's because we always have to build things from scratch. So I think that, Pastor just really trying to answer the question of like why the conversations are different because people got things that they're going to lose. You got generational gold. You got all of these things that are attached to all of these other communities that they don't necessarily want to share. Well, we don't have nothing. So, like, if you bring it, we're going to make the scrap work. But, come on. We got to, like, be real in these conversations. I'm sorry. I
Put your hands
digress.
together for him for that. All right, we're going to have Jibion, and then we have Rabbi Bob Kaplan.
So to really jump in, my name is Javion. I currently work for the mayor of New York City. And I really want to jump in because you guys mentioned what is the government's responsibility or role when it comes to dealing with hate. We have an office called Office of Hate Crime Prevention, who do a lot of great work in preventing and being involved in hate crime. the first thing that I want to answer is the missing link between information. Information concerning what hate is, what's going on in the community, who is transpiring, who is doing these things, aren't easily accessible to everybody. I think a lot of platforms, a lot of media engagement share one side of the information and don't give the entire story. So we have two people who are caught between a story that's incorrect or inaccurate. So that's the first thing, misinformation. How do we combat misinformation within the community? I think we get so caught up in thinking that, okay, the government isn't doing anything, and the first responsibility is a lack of love that's in the neighborhood. How I grew up in a village. I'm from the island of Jamaica. The first thing was, if I ever gave problem in Jamaica, the entire community can bust my behind, because simply that was the community. We had an ability to love one another in that community. Now it's changed. We've changed that to the point that my kid is my responsibility. Your kid is your responsibility. We've missing that, and now we've gone and say, hey, the government has to get involved. If you don't handle your responsibility in the community first, how do you expect the government to help you out of it? My pastor always says something: you can never legislate yourself out of hate and out of gun violence. So before you guys say, what is the legislators doing? You cannot create policies that will get you out of what is hidden inside the heart of a man. We cannot just create policy. It has to get down to combating the misinformation and bringing love back into the community. Now I'm here to speak also, what is the mayor doing of New York City doing concerning this thing? The mayor has consistently brought groups of people of different races and different ethnicities to this table to sit down with him to share exactly what the issues are going on in the community. So we are taking information day in and day out how to combat these issues without offending one particular group, but also bring an accurate solution to the problem. So I just want to make it clear. Excellent. You cannot legislate your way out of hate. You have to build it through love.
That's awesome. Come on, put your hands together for that. Profound. All right.
So first off, I want to be totally transparent. I was one of the folks that called Dr. Allen to say not to advise not to do this.
Right. You say it was a can of worms that I'm opening.
There's a lot of landmines out here.
Right.
And
I thank you for that.
But growing up in Brooklyn, and particularly growing up in a city housing project in Brooklyn, you learn that landmines can be something you don't even see until you step on them and you hear that click, click, you know? And then once that happens, ain't too much you can do, even though the movies say you can dig, you say, well, somebody will put a rock on it. You just got to be careful sometimes when you step into this kind of world.
Well, we're happy to have you here, so educate us, sir.
Thank
you.
I want to lift up something that was said about what's going on the campus. I did go on the campus. I worked on campus for many, many years. I was a Hillel director. Hillel is the Jewish groups on campus at NYU. And then I ran all the Hillels in the greater New York area for a long time. So I'm familiar with Columbia a lot. My daughter's also a professor of social work there. So I get all the firsthand stories. And I want to verify something. The vitriolic hatred that I heard outside the gates was horrific and scary and unacceptable. What I saw inside the gates, and when I was walking around, I just happened to be there on the day when all the students that had been accepted for next year were walking around taking a look and see what they're going to be walking into, was pretty peaceful. And I think there's a misnomer that the folks in the encampment were all Palestinians. Very few. Some Jews, some Asians, some folks in the African American community, from all different kinds of communities were there. And in a conversation I was having with a South Asian fellow that wanted to talk to me, we finally wound up. I said, well, you know, the difference was, and I grew up and my teeth were cut in the last demonstrations on campus back in the late 60s, early 70s. I said, my demonstration was over there, and your demonstration's over here. So we were hanging out on the steps of Loeb Library as opposed to, and that's the building they occupied, and along with Hamilton Hall. But the need to feel the world and to touch the world in that particular age cohort is radically important. I use that word radical for a reason, because that's where many people step into it, and eventually they do step out of it. Some of us who learned during that period of time that you need to change the world in a constructive, sustainable way, continue doing that, and that's sort of where, where we're headed right now. There's a professor at Columbia University. His name is Peter Coleman. He's the head of the Morton Deutsch Center on Conflict Resolution. And in a study that he did, we are living in the most toxic, polarized society in America today since 1861. You all know what happened in 1861. It was, the Civil War. And it's the world that these students in, when talk about trauma, they've walked through COVID. They've walked through the trauma of this toxicity in society, where people who are supposed to be the leaders of society use hate as a tool, and almost an acceptable tool to get their office, or to try and get their office, or to demonize others. The whole misuse of power. We're talking about power, we're talking about the whole misuse of power. And they're also, and there's another guy, professor at NYU, who's written a book called The Anxious Generation, about Gen Z, who talks about this is the first generation that has grown up with social media as their primary source of information. And I think you need to really understand what a sea change that is, because the last time we had such a change in where we got information was the inventing of the printing press in the 1500s, and that took 150 years to get into society. And look at the changes that came out of that. One of them happened to be the American Revolution. Came out of the printing press 150 some odd years later. This all happened between 2010, and the data's there, by the way, that the data shows that there's been incredible mental health disruption amongst that generation, increased suicide, increased hopelessness, increased depression because of the isolation that social media has had. And what I saw when I walked down that campus and other places and other students I've spoken to since is that they, for the first time in their lives, they felt a sense of community. Now, feeling a sense of community does not mean you can step into hate. And feeling a sense I remember during, right after Kent State, and by the way, this is the 50th anniversary, no, the 54th anniversary of Kent State was last week, May 4th. Right after Kent State, those of you who don't know what Kent State was, or the Orangeburg was in 1968, and one of my friends, Ben Chavis, told me about his involvement with that in South Carolina, is that Kent State, the National Guard, rather than calling for the National Guard, as it was done by a certain congressperson recently, they actually called in the National Guard with live ammo, and four students were killed that day on campus. And that was a wake-up call for everyone at that point in time, but it didn't wake up enough. So right after Kent State, when we had to close up schools in New York because we were really freaked out, we were traumatized, and this issue of trauma I think is the key issue that we all do share. I remember it was an epiphanal moment in my journey into leadership, and I think that's ultimately where it resides, by the way. It resides in us who have decided to be leaders in society. Can't depend upon government, ain't gonna do it. You can't depend upon others. You really need to depend upon those who have stepped into leadership and take the responsibility for fixing the brokenness that we've helped
Rabbi,
to create.
let me ask you a question. You think, is it possible we have the wrong leaders in leadership?
You know something? Of course we have some wrong leaders there. We've always had wrong leaders there. We've had leaders that misuse and abuse power, but we have really good people that know how to step into things. And sometimes you got to sit in front of that burning bush, let it talk to you, and then you got to be brave enough to go and face those leaders that are wrong and say, excuse me, this ain't working. So I remember there was one angry young man. And people talk about there wasn't anger back then. There was one angry young man that we were walking with, some stupid young person decided to jump a fence and beat up a cop. So he got arrested. And in our youthful enthusiasm, we said, and this was at Canarsie High School. That's where I come from, Canarsie. We'd march down Rockaway Parkway and liberate that young man from the local police station. Doesn't happen, by the way, but you think it does. Anyway, so on the way there, we're marching down Rockaway Parkway, and this young person was screaming at all the hard hats. They used to call them hard hats. Now you call them something else. The other side, who was yelling at the demonstrators. And I pulled him alongside, and I said to him, listen, you don't live here. These guys are going to kill you. They're going to beat your head in, because that's just who they are. I live amongst them, and we got to be cautious and careful. Our job is to change their minds, not to anger their minds. And the only thing I accomplished was for him to yell at me. But I did accomplish something else. I realized that this was not to yell at people, to scream at people, to hate people, to get people to hate more is not the way out of this. It's to get people to understand and work with each other.
That's excellent.
So I think that's the essence of leadership. But you got to take that responsibility, and you got to take the responsibility of what it means. Because sometimes you're going to say things to power, that power is not going to like what they're hearing, and you got to say things to people that are not going to like what they're hearing, but even though they may complain, you got to get them out, and you got to bring them to where they need to be.
Rabbi, I'm going to jump off from what you just said now, and because we want to keep this conversation to an hour. When you said, when we speak to power, power may not like what you said, right? And I think that's what we are seeing on college campuses now, that the powers that be are withholding the diplomas from students who are graduating. And the thing is, what I would like to ask the panel, do they have a right to withhold the diplomas now that they have graduated? And now that they're speaking out, and I think Barry said the word, speak their own truth. Now, do the powers that be have a right to punish them further in that sense? Dan, I see you shaking your head again. And do they have a right? But I want you to answer that question for me. Do they have a right to withhold this? What they so worked hard, because in the news this morning they were talking about the students now are the students of the pandemic who came in during now you're going to further punish them now just because they spoke out. What do you think about that?
I'm on the spot. Another role or identity that I have, I'm actually...
You have a lot of identities.
I have so many of them right now.
All right.
I got like a bag full of them. So I'm getting ready to graduate from the new school. And, one of the things that we talked about as students, going through this process is, what are we willing to do? What are we willing to risk? Wow. And
who's asking that question?
The students. This is
What
undergrad.
I'll repeat the two questions.
What are we willing to do?
What are we willing to do?
And what are we willing to risk?
What are we willing to risk?
Right. And, nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. But part of the negotiations students have presented is, don't turn in our grades. We don't want our grades until you meet our demands. And so in this moment, I think the students have I think the students are recognizing their own power and their own authority to choose their destiny and to make moves, make movement happen. And so when it comes to administrators punishing students for peacefully protesting and using their voices as they've been teaching them in these classrooms to stand up for something and to make moves in the world, I think it is not their right. Besides that, these students are paying to be there. School is a business, and I've done my job, deliver my product.
Ooh, can you yes, I was waiting for you, my good friend. Pass him the mic, please. And please say your name again for us. Rabbi, I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly.
First of all, I always speak after Bob, and I make sure to speak double the time he speaks.
No, no. No. I have lots of respect for Rabbi Bob, and I would not dare, but I love him. But no, Rabbi Bob is. But please.
Listen, I agree that we have a lot of...
Rabbi, please say your name.
Yaakov Bierman, Crown Heights. I've been here since born here in 1982. My mother came here in the 70s. She actually she was a hippie from California. She lived 3 years in Kumasi, Ghana, building roads. My father also comes from a secular background. We have a lot in common, shared history. We suffered persecution over the years, both our communities. I grew up in Stuart. My father moved into a neighborhood in Florida, which was a interracial neighborhood. He told me it became interracial when he moved in there. It was a black neighborhood, and he told me when they passed the Civil Rights Act, he wanted to take a bunch of children from the neighborhood swimming in an infinity pool, and the moms didn't let him. Why? Because some privileged white man's going to hold our children underwater. They were worried. And what he told me it was a real threat. It wasn't imaginary. It was in those days, in the 60s, it was a real threat. So I agree. And something about Crown Heights, we have so much in common. There's Andrew Goodman in the 60s, was killed fighting for civil rights, a Jewish man. His family lives in Crown Heights. So we have a lot of shared history, and we've stood together over the years. But I have a problem with the conversation, and I'll tell you why. For a few reasons.
Please let them know what you told me.
I have a problem, yeah. May I stand?
Yes, please.
All right. First of all, we have two esteemed professors from educational institutes, and both of you spoke about the issue with the media. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, soon to be, right? I didn't do that yet. All right, but soon. We have educators from prominent universities, and you're talking about the media's role, whether they exaggerated what's going on campus. It happens to be we have kids from the neighborhood on campus. I saw footage from campus. One of the leaders of the protest movement in Colombia called to kill Zionists publicly, wouldn't apologize. He forcefully removed Jewish students from campus on video. I called the mayor's office. I said, next day, send the police in. Everybody deserves to be safe. Whether you're Jewish, whether you're black, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, you deserve to be safe. Jewish kids were not safe on campus for weeks. Jewish institutions were closed. Jewish kids went home. It was not safe. And two things happened. Now we're having this conversation about the media's role. What about your role? The reason why the campuses look the way they are is because the campuses have been rotten for years. We've been educating the youth wrong for years. And now when we have this explosion of hate, what's the conversation? About how it's being exaggerated and how maybe it's not that hateful. Why are they hating? They're calling to murder Jews. On October 8th, elected officials from this district were advertising an event where they celebrated the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust on college campuses. In a few hours after October 7th, there were celebrations. There were marches. This wasn't about Gaza. Nobody had entered Gaza. So that's my problem. So I would respond to the educators and to the professors. Yes, obviously the media plays a role. Sometimes they exaggerate. They've always done it. The media has never been honest historically. But what is your role? Where has the education gone wrong? Why is it okay today to be an elected official and preach hate? There are multiple elected officials in this district and surrounding districts that condemned PD's response, but none of them condemned the anti-Semitism. How is that okay? So I'm going to end now. I look forward to working with you. And like I said at the beginning, we have a shared history. But for some reason, it's my view, anti-Semitism is treated differently than every other hate in this country. And it's come to a point where it's being legitimized, mainstreamed, and it's okay. And we're even criticized for condemning anti-Semitism. I'll give you an example. Calling for a global intifada or saying resistance is justified in the context of October 7th is justifying and legitimizing the murder and rape of Jewish women, the beheading of Jewish babies, the kidnapping of Holocaust survivors. When you come on October 8th, a day after the worst massacre of Jews, and you say resistance is justified, and you're a Columbia professor or Columbia student, I say fire that professor, and that student, yes, should not get a diploma. Let them go take another 4 years, and when Am I being straight?
You are being straight.
All right, I'm sorry. All right,
I-
let them go through college again, and when they know how to treat all groups with love, and they know how to behave in a civilized society, then we'll pass them and let them enter society like the rest of us. Thank you.
Rabbi Yaakov, let me just say this right now, and I thank you for that. Give me one quick second.
But you got to check
By the
that,
way,
bro.
Yes, and I'm
He
grateful.
slipped me $20 before the beginning of the meeting. And
You got to check that.
I thank you for that, and I so appreciate your input on that. Anti-Semitism has, in regards to all other ethnicities of hate crimes, has a more profound look in the media than versus the black community. Now, anti-Semitism.
Wait, but
give me one quick second. Give me one quick second. If it is on record that for anti-Semitism, it's more reported than it is than black hate is being reported. And so it's when you say that, in the and how you said it, I can respect that, but there is so much more hate that black people face as a people. But the only big difference is that it's underreported.
I don't disagree. I don't
okay.
disagree.
I thought-
I'll tell you where I don't disagree. I don't disagree that there's other forms of hate that are underreported. I agree. And I do agree that anti-Semitism does get media coverage.
It does.
Where I disagree
Much
is
more.
But I disagree is that elected officials today in this district
Okay.
get away with saying vile anti-Semitic slogans, and there was an elected official in the district.
this community?
In
Well, I wouldn't know
yes,
who they
somebody
are,
in the
so.
district over. This is in
wouldn't
addition
know.
to saying from the river to the sea, which is calling for genocide of Jewish people, tweeted a map of Israel. They replaced the entire Israel with Palestine. And this was before October 7th, which was essentially saying, push the Jews into the sea, replace Israel with Palestine. That is, if when Kalman Yeager said something which was a lot less controversial in terms of how he said and what he said, he was demoted and removed from every committee on the city council. So I'm not talking about the media response. I'm talking about how anti-Semitism has become mainstream, and people are allowed to say things anti-Semitic, which 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, would be completely unacceptable. And we don't find that. I don't believe we find this with other minority groups.
No. I'm going to
Same.
disagree with that
I'm talking.
right there now.
I'm
Hold on a
talking.
second.
I want to be very specific.
I want to be very.
specific. I'm talking about the rhetoric from elected officials. What is the bar considered mainstream by the, let's say, mainstream community? Yeah. I'm not talking about, obviously, it's extremist rhetoric, and there's horrible right-wing, white supremacists that are in office. I'm not disputing that. I'm talking about in the mainstream population, what is considered acceptable to say. And I feel the bar with anti-Semitism has completely changed. Thank you.
That's true. So the first thing I want to do, Rabbi, is empathize with what you, your family, your communities have been going through for generations. I think that is heinous. I think that no human should ever experience that. I can feel your passion. I can feel your frustration, your sadness, and your confusion. You shouldn't have to experience that in no way, shape, or form, just like everybody in this room. Now, I just want you to pay attention to the power of your experience and how in real time every black and brown person literally shut down. And it's not because we felt like, damn, we a part of that, because we're not. We can actually identify with what you just said doesn't exist in our communities in the way that it does with yours. So I'm here to just kind of like give you and I'm trying to make eye-to-eye contact, because as two grown men first, the same pain and passion that you want to protect your children with, my daughter's going to Syracuse in September, and that's the one thing that I'm afraid of, is that some white Jewish man might say, hey, pretty black girl, it's great that you're here, like she doesn't belong, right? And it's innocent, but it's just this bias of saying like you can identify it happens in your community, and then in the same breath say, well, it's you kind of like equate it to anyone else. Trauma is the same. Sadness, all of those things we feel. That's why we shut down, because we're like, damn, you too? Well, welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. Because you want your kids to be protected. But in our community, ask how many black kids go to Columbia. Let's think about that. Your kids are getting kicked off. Our kids can't get in. So if we want to do something, don't worry about the rhetoric of a political official, because we can vote them out. How about institutional change? Give my son the book that you give your son. Because it's something you got going that's working. And you want to know how we know it's working? Because you don't let us in. So I feel you. I'm sorry that you have to experience that. Because as a father to a father, as a community leader to a community leader, in our rooms, this is all we do. Is just talk about it. Because when we walk out, I can't call the mayor. You got Eric's number? God damn, can I get it?
The mayor's office, not the mayor's office.
It don't matter. Raise your hand. Anybody got Eric's number in here? Probably one person. They probably 60. Because they've been in the game too long.
Excellent. Come
That's
on,
all
put
I
your
wanna
hands
say.
Hello. Just to be clear, he didn't listen to me.
I know. I just
No,
wanted to.
we get y'all. We
make the
get y'all.
announcement.
That was a simply excellent. All right, let's go because we're on the timeline now. Want to say something?
Shannon.
You got the man.
Oh no, I was saying when you're on a college campus and you find those leaders and you find those professors that empower you, make you feel seen, protect your identity in a space where everyone else around you does not look like you. It's a life-changing experience. I went to Cornell University, and I was a part of every organization you can think of. Everyone, they're calling Shannon, the president. There's a problem on campus, we're calling Shannon. And the issue came about of the name of the Cornell plantations on campus. And again, as an RA, in Ujima, which is the residential black college, so everyone in the building looks like me. The heaviness that returned back to the residence hall that evening, myself as a student had to put on a student hat and an RA hat to create a safe space for my residents. So I know that from one perspective, it can seem like, oh, this is an issue about the government, and this is an issue about issues that exist in different countries, but there are students on campuses where they live, they lay their head there, and they do not feel safe. So again, yes, all those things are important, but I do not think that there are enough conversations about what it means to live in a place where you feel hated, a place where you're going there for something different, and yes, you wanna express your rights, yes, you wanna be involved, yes, you wanna speak your piece, but at the very moment you do so, your very protection is at risk.
Excellent. Excellent. One of the issues, and thank you. Come on, put your hands together for her. One of Rabbi Bob and Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Plotkin is also here. And one of the greatest issues that I've had when I do these panels, and I've been doing it for the last 4 years now, one of the biggest issues I have is that I spend so much money buying kosher food. And look who's here. Look who's here. I spend all this money buying kosher food, and look who's here. And no matter how much I blast it in these communities, no matter how I put it out, and then we get a small 2, 3, Mayan is here. Thank you for being here.
That's because they hear
And
upstairs, though. I think that's what we got.
But here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying, Barry. We need representatives from both communities to come out that have the power to make the changes from within those communities. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? We need, because if it's people who can't make the change, then as you said, what are we doing? So I want to ask you about 3 more questions. I'm going to take a question from the audience. But I want to ask you a question, Brandon. You, as a pastor within a predominantly black church, what do you feel is the responsibility of the church? And I want to ask Rabbi Bob, I'm going to ask you the question, what do you feel is the responsibility of the synagogue, the Jewish community, however you want to put it, in brief words before we get to a place where we can interact with each other and talk to each other and see how we can solve this hate?
I think, thank you for that question. I think our responsibility is very layered and weighted. One, we are called by biblical mandate to serve our community. And so as leaders, as pastoral leaders, or as churches, we cannot forget that what we are called to do is serve. I know pastoring in Harlem has not been easy. One, because gentrification has certainly taken a toll on the community. And so who we see walking by on Sunday morning are not those who look like us. Now, if they come by, sometimes they're coming by to inquire, is the building for sale? and I have to remember who I am with my robe on. But I think also as a congregation or as a leader in the community, we also have to remember what we preach, and our people have to see us doing it, and so we have to encourage our people to go out and vote. And not just vote and not hold these politicians and the lying politicians unaccountable. We have to hold them accountable. Also, we need to visit our community boards. I'm glad to see the two sisters from the community board here, but we don't do that for some reason. We don't go to community boards. We'll hear the information, and maybe we'll think about it on the walk home, and then once we get to the train, we forget about what was said, or we forget about what is being proposed in our community. And I think the last thing that we have to do is we have to come together for forums like this. If we don't do it, who else is going to do it?
Excellent. Mayan, you want to say something, but let's do it brief for the sake of time. Thank you. Just keep it brief for the sake of time.
Ooh, I don't know. We'll see.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mayan Zeke. I work as a community coordinator for One Crown Heights. We do the festival in the summer. In any case, I wanted to respond to some of the things that I'm hearing here. So Dave asked the question, why is the Jewish community here? He spends all this money on the food. My gosh, thank you so much, Dave. But, why is the Jewish community not here? Why are just a few of us here? So I'm going to answer that a little bit with a story and then say something else. So in 2020, in the various different chats that I was in the Jewish community, they found, they were saying, it's not right what happened with George Floyd. There should be justice for everyone, et cetera, et cetera. They wanted to participate in some of these rallies and things like this, but they didn't feel safe to do that. Because what happens if they step into that space? Are they going to be considered just, oh, you're against us because you don't look like us? Are they going to be attacked for whatever reason? So there's fear there. And a lot of when we talk, we have to be careful about how we talk, what we talk about, etc., and the language that we use is coded. I helped to lead a march in 2020 in solidarity with social justice at the time, and at first, we have a group of us, and at first we thought, oh, it would only be 30 of us. It'd be like 10 of us and like 20 of my friend's family or something. She's from Iran. But in any case, over 300 people showed up. Women in their shaitels, in their wigs, in their tiklach, their head coverings, etc. They came with their babies because we said we would make it safe for them, and we kept our promise. And so when we have these kinds of forums and discussions that are just kind of like once in a while, like, oh, hey, like, let's have a forum. Is it going to be safe? Are we going to be
Safe for who? Can you I'm sorry.
safe for
who?
you're asking, you asked for, well, I'm a Jamaican Jewish woman, okay? Jamaican American Jewish woman, okay? Jamaican.
I guess I'm trying to understand.
So
when you say
you're asking,
safe,
I'm
yeah.
speaking from a Jewish perspective. Of
It's gonna
is
be
it
safe.
is it
Who's
going
asking
to,
the question? Who's it going to be safe for?
I'm asking me. Let's say just me. Is this going to be safe? Me, I've been back and forth, like between, like, you know, like if you saw me on the street, you wouldn't assume that I was a Jewish woman. You would just go, oh, she's just another black woman. Okay, fine. Like, which church will I find her at? But that's not the case. I'm a Jewish person. So I'm speaking from a perspective that I've noticed. Is the space that I walk into going to be a safe space? Even the other day, I went to some alumni thing for some school I went to. One moment, just one moment. Okay. I went to an alumni thing, and I should have felt like comfortable in that space because that's the school I went to. But all of a sudden, there's this new layer of like, oh, by the way, I'm Jewish also. It's like, well, who can I talk to in this room? Is it safe for me to talk to this person? Will our politics conflict? Is there going to be some big issue here? But in any case, I digress. Also, I wanted to note that even like, I enjoyed most of the things that you guys said, like the general things, but at the same time, there's some coded language, like you, good sir, Barry, right? You talked about walking around, noticing how all the Jews are in this apartment building. We have our own schools. You, Mr. Allen, Reverend Allen, mentioned, oh, they're walking around asking us whether our property is for sale. That's coded language. That's you guys assuming a certain thing about Jewish people that is not always across the board true. Maybe it happens sometimes, maybe it happens on occasion, but it's not all the way across the board true. Like, there are poor Jews. There are significantly more poor Jews than whatever. You can't assume that, oh, we all have it good, we all have it whatever, when that's simply not the case. We're just as people as you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm getting...
No, I think that...
Hello. But also, the other thing I wanted to say is that I think that some of the, like, while we make assumptions and stereotypes, those sort of things, this coded language, destroys and dismantles bridges that it destroys the plans, really, for the bridges that haven't even been, sat down together and put on the paper and drawn up to be built.
Yeah.
Already, it's this.
Mayan, I'm gonna let
Sorry,
somebody
you're
respond to
no.
that.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
Mayan, tell him the truth.
Also,
tell him the truth.
Sorry.
Tell him the truth.
Also,
Chicken soup.
What?
You want the
I
Jews
don't
to
know
come,
what
you
you're
have to serve
talking
chicken
about.
soup.
Hold on one second. Anyway, also history. Wow. We all need to learn history, and not just in a way that is, oh, I'm looking for all the opinions and thoughts that I already have to prove what I'm already thinking. No, you need to sit down, listen, and allow the information to unfold and unwind without your bias, without your preconceived notions of stereotypes and assumptions. And that is all I'm going to say. Thank you so much.
Come on,
for
put your
your
hands
time.
together for her.
Absolutely.
But I am not going to respond to that. I'm going to let the panelists respond to that, and then we're going to go to a question from the crowd. I see a hand up, and then we're going to close out. So that was so...
Yeah, it was good. It was actually...
Please, go.
It was truthful. And I think that, to the first part of your statement and your questions that you had about, is it safe for you? That's valid. But I would... you made me think, and I got all my civil rights movements all in my head, but I remember distinctly with Martin Luther King when they first went across the bridge. Somebody remind me of that bridge that they Huh? Say it again. Yeah. When it was just black folk, they couldn't get across. They were beat down. And then someone said, Martin, put a call out to the rabbis, the Catholic, all the white men, and let them walk together. And guess what happened? We all got across, right? So I guess I'm afraid as well. But if we did a protest and we had an army of Jewish brothers and sisters, right, who were a different complexion than you are to walk with us, the only thing that, because we're afraid too, because if we protest, you don't got to worry about us fighting each other. You got to worry about the NYPD getting that call from that miraculous room somewhere in the city where it says, all right, this is done with. But if you walk with us and your brothers and sisters walk with us, oh, we get a whole, we could probably make it to the end. And then we can actually sing together. So to think that when we protest, or to have the preconceived notion that when we protest that we want to destroy, nah, we just hurt people, right? And we are oppressed people. So when we look at the community, the bodega ain't ran by us, the stores that's not ran by us, you want us to have ownership of it, and it's not ours. So when we tear it up, we don't see what you see, because we don't own. And then to the latter part of the coded language, I grew up on Lexington and Marcus Garvey all of my life. My parents was the last to hold on. The last to hold on. Right around the corner was a daycare that me and my sister both went to. And it's a big Jewish building with all of their kids going to that school. And they don't let nobody in. I can't send my 3-year-old son to that daycare. And that it is literally around the corner from the folk that we were talking about. See, we try to as black folk, we try to be, politically correct, but the Jewish men who have access to property in a way that we don't, I remember distinctly me and my father running them off of our property. So see, the thing is that you have somebody protecting your community where we don't even know who to go to. So I think that we will always have misconception when you don't realize that as a African-American woman first, a black woman first, there is just things that we are not privileged to, unfortunately. And it's not the rabbi's fault. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. It's just what is. And know that your power is to, we need help. Our communities need help. We need your support, and we need your undying support, because they will kill us, or they will just arrest you. And I think that's the difference.
And both communities, I got to get a question from them.
They see this first before they go, oh, wait, what does she believe in?
Both communities have coded languages. Both. Right? So it's not necessarily one has one more, but both communities have. I saw your pink hand go on. You need a mic. And then we're going to take one more question and panel your last feedback, and we close out. Are y'all having a good time? All right. Y'all learning a lot? All right. Thank you.
My eyes are open differently, and I'm grateful to everything that has been shared here this evening. I live in this community, and I've lived here for a very long time. I've seen the changes. I'm living the changes. My grandchildren are coming in. I came as a little girl from Panama when I was 10 years old. I'm 68 years of age. I moved away, came back home, bought the home that I'm in. The community is changing, but I'm embracing it. I'm embracing my brothers and my sisters that are different than me. I go to the store over there to get some of the food that I want. Why sometimes do I want to pay a little extra? The truth? Because I can't get the real thing over here. My produce, when I get it somewhere else, from my brothers and my sisters who don't look like me, it's a little higher. But the produce is different. The chicken is different. The fish is different. It tastes different. And it's not because it's kosher, because it's different. It's raised different. It's coming from a different place. But I embrace my brothers and my sisters, and they embrace me because I make it my business. So I'm staying here. We have to make it our business to meet each other. Yes, Dr. Allen, I commend you. I take my hat off to you. And I give you kudos for setting up this forum. And I pray and I hope that after tonight, we see this room with more filled with brothers and sisters that are different than us, because it is a safe place. We're here to make a difference. I'm part of the community board because of this man. Because of this man. I wasn't going to community board. I was busy working, raising my children. But he got me involved. And then when I retired, I wanted to do more for my community because my grandbabies are coming up. My children did their job. Now they have to do theirs. But I have to see this community because it's changing. I have to see what Dr. King said one day, because my granddaughter is different than some of my other grandkids. She's brown skin. She's got beautiful hair. She's got a funny looking nose. But she's smart as hell, because I take the time to teach her love and that all people are alike. She'll ask questions every day. Who's that? Like when she sees my brothers and my sisters in the community who are Jewish, who's that? And I can tell her their names. I don't know how many people in this room, even with people that look like us, can we tell each other's name?
That's right.
In your own block. Do you really know all of your neighbors? I know my neighbor. She didn't recognize me, but I knew exactly. He didn't remember when she greeted him, she didn't greet me.
Do you know her name?
I don't know her name, but I know where she lives.
Interesting. Thank you.
She doesn't live on the same block with
Sonia.
me.
Right.
She lives in a different block. So I want to say this last remark. Even the most informed person could be misinformed.
Wow, put your hands together for Deacon Sonia. That was real well. And to Barry's point and to Deacon Sonia, you know, about, and I'm going to get to the last thoughts from the panel concerning this hate. You know, about 15 years ago, about 16 years ago, I used to come to Brooklyn for different reasons. I used to drive to Brooklyn, especially in Bed-Stuy, right, about 16, 17 years ago. And I used to be afraid to park my car. And because a buddy of mine would tell me they're going to steal my tires. I had 17-inch rims and 19-inch rims on my car, and they said, Dave, they're going to steal. And there was all these buildings around Barry with boarded up on my block that we live now, right? Fast forward to now, I don't know 99% of my neighbors. They look different from me. Because all the ones that look like us have left. Not only that, they look different, they don't talk. So no matter how much I say, I'm not Dr. Allen to them, I'm a black man. And they don't see me dress up. They see me in slacks, they see me in my sneakers. They don't know that I have all these degrees. As a matter of fact, they probably don't care. They go by the assumptions. You see that? You want to say something, Ross? But make it quick because we got to get out of here. And say what office you work for, please.
I'm not going to say that.
You're not going to say that? All right, fine.
My name is Orlando, and I grew up in Crown Heights. I'm a graduate from Long Island University, and I also am Panamanian. Back in the day, we saw all the stuff that went on in Crown Heights. The only thing that I want to leave with the group, I thought this was an amazing group. I thought this was an amazing opportunity to listen and learn from others. But what came to my heart is that we're so much alike that you might not even believe it. Through my job, I haven't really had too many interactions with Muslim community. But through my job, I got to know about the Pakistanis. And I got to know about the Jewish people and about all the other people. If you know anything about Panama, it's the Switzerland of Central America. It took the Haitians, the Jamaicans, the Trinidadians, the Barbadians. I'm part Barbados. My family is Trinidadian. I have Jamaican in my family. I also have Scottish. And I have Canadian, black and white in our family. It is so important that we celebrate our differences and try to find commonality. We all bleed red. My mom used to say at the end of the day, don't tell them who you are, just tell them that you're black, because that's who you are. But we also have to transcend that and walk in love and walk in truth. The Bible says, speak truth in love, and people will be able to receive it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yolanda, come on. All right, panel, as we close out, how do we demystify the hate, Barry? Coming down. Real brief.
I think we just
Is
did
everybody
it.
in here hungry?
I think we did it. Sometimes we kind of like look for like that one button answer. I think by holding space and everybody being empathetic and, like Orlando said, like just listening. Even if you don't agree with all the perspectives, the fact that we controlled our egos gives us the ability to be able to walk with the information. And then whatever you actually took, right, like really hold on to that. Like, sis, that nugget you just said, even the most informed could be misinformed. That's a shirt, right? Like that. Like and I'm on a panel, but I'm walking away with that, and I'm gonna spread that to young men who are under me and who I have the privilege of being with. So like, understand that, Doc, you putting this together, we answered it. We just need to do it more.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's a few thoughts that I have. One of them is, I think it's very important for us to understand that and acknowledge within all of us and in this community that oppression is never okay, of any kind, from anybody, happening to anybody. And again, I believe with my whole heart that whatever's happening to a brother or a sister or whomever is happening to me too. And this is one struggle. And it is important for us, for me, I'm going to talk about me. It's important for me to educate myself, to listen to the stories of other people that I don't know, welcome them into my home, into my space, go into their spaces. It's really about education and, understanding that the enemy is not within us. It's not within us. It's something else. It's an entity. It's a spirit. It's oppression. We don't want that.
Thank you. Yes, y'all clap. That was great. Thank you.
I would say, in closing, that we remember to teach love to our children. I like what the sister said. She's doing it. And the hope is that she will take that same love to her preschool classroom or her first grade classroom. And then when she gets to Columbia or Harvard or somewhere, she takes that same love that grandma taught her. I'm a product of a household filled with love, so much that I just give it away. And so I think we have to continue to teach because it does begin at home.
Absolutely.
I think what I'm thinking about, awkward builds, and having these uncomfortable conversations can shift our perspectives. And I also believe that this conversation that we are having, it can promote healing within our communities. And it's just like the biggest thing is the shift and just being open to receive the different perspectives, going home and reflecting, and then thinking about how can we change for tomorrow.
Excellent.
I think that often when we look at living documents, we should also look at conversations as living conversations. Conversations that always require more pieces, more thoughts, more ideas, and this is one of those living conversations. So every space that we go into, I know that it's easy for a conversation to look one way when it's just in one space, but the moment we bring it out of that space and allow the conversations to meet, what is produced can be beautiful. And only by letting them meet do we get to that place of harmony, of sharing the love, of sharing the empathy, of sharing the kindness, but also taking the time to listen and understand and speak with our heart. So I think that it's essential that we all charge ourselves, but also any young person that you know, implore them to start the conversation. Any young person you know going to college, a college campus, a space where they are amongst other ideas, other individuals, people that may not look like them, challenge them with asking, how are you? What's your name? Where do you come from? How can I learn more about your culture? And we can share cultures. That's one of the best things I took away from going to college. Being able to meet people from across the world and then scaring my mother half to death and going across the world by myself to embrace that culture, to learn more about that culture, and coming back and being able to say, hey, let's have a fruitful, dynamic conversation about what I learned. But that is the only way that we demystify and break apart the walls that hate and mistrust can build.
Mic drop. Excellent. Put your hands together for Danny and for this wonderful panel. Come on. Yes.
I also think space to apologize is really, really, really important. And space to take apologies seriously and to say the wrong thing and to be called out and to be genuinely remorseful and to have that remorse accepted. And I think that's one of the things that is so absent from a lot of these conversations, is that there's so much either fear of saying the wrong thing or insistence, and once you have gone too far, you're done. And I think space to apologize, space to make right, space to really, to grow. And that's where growth comes from.
Wow, come on, excellent. Just simply excellent. Tonight we covered so many things that can grow, so many things. You know, in the Christian culture, there is a particular scripture that says that one person plants a seed and another one waters, but God gives the increase. You know, I've been doing this for so long, and I'm often just often blown away what comes out of this. And sometimes I get really discouraged because, you know, I'm hoping that more of our people will come out and more of our people will take this and build upon it. But also it encourages me because I know it's a conversation to be had. Y'all got that? It's a conversation. And so while I did get so many phone calls about why are you having this conversation, look at the amount of things that came out of it. Look at the jewels that came out of it, the nuggets of gold. And so I want to thank you, Rabbi Bob, for the encouragement. And I want to thank each and every one of, especially, come on, put your hands again for this panelist. You should never be afraid to have the hard conversation. But, you know, I'll take the words of Rabbi Bob. Be careful about the landmines that you may step on, but just walk with some hard shoes. Walk with some hard shoes, because these are hard conversations. And so I really want to just say my thanks to PAF, who is one of the sponsors of this with OPHC. We have my good friend Christine. Come on, Christine, let everybody stand up, say something, which represents from PAF.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm just always blown away by these moments where we can really be present to listen, to understand, and to really empathize and put ourselves in someone else's perspective. And I do feel that is a major point in the transition of demystifying the hate, you know, and really having a better sense of who we are as a people, what we're into, but then how can we understand and take that back home with us. So yes, but Christine from the 67th Precinct Clergy Council, the PATH Program Director, which is Partners Against the Hate initiative by the Mayor's Office. So just happy to be here to support.
Awesome. Put your hands together for Christine. Also in the house is the president / executive director of the God Squad. Come on, brother Jamaican man. Come on up here and say something to the people. Move fast. We're on a timeline. Come on. Oh, I said Reverend Edward Hines. I don't know.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. Apologies for coming late. We had a press conference earlier. Tomorrow we prepare to eulogize one of our young men who was killed in Manhattan, coming from school. He lives in the 67th Precinct catchment area.
How old is he?
He was 16 years old, Makai Brown. And so we had a press conference tonight. Grateful and thankful for the conversation we had here tonight, demystifying the destructive hate. It was in 1991, I believe it was, that Rodney King made a profound statement. He said on the mic, "Can't we all just get along?" And Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a prolific African clergy, made a point. He said, one thing we learn about history is that we do not learn about history. And so this is a very interesting, and I appreciate Dr. Allen, thank Dr. Allen for having these uncomfortable conversations, because out of this, I believe that there is much to garner, because there is more that unites us than what divides us. I believe that wholeheartedly. And so my hope and prayer is that there'll be more of these conversations, more of these dialogues, and more of greater understanding, so that we can appreciate us as a human race. Because at the end, that's who we are, a part of one race, a human race. So thank you, Dr. Allen, for leading this. Thank you, Path, for surprise support. Thank you to panelists who came out. Rabbi Bob, good to see you, and others who are here. Let us continue to spread the narrative and demystify the hate against. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Come on, put your hands together for him. All right, the great good food is from Bluefin Restaurant, which is on 1487 Broadway. I said the address correctly? What? Look at that. I have a great memory. 1487 Broadway, and I want to put your hands together for my man Tony Smith, who is doing the cameras, making it all happen. Put your hands together for the person who reached out to the panel and everyone else. My good friend, my coordinator, my right hand, left hand, my all in between. Miss Batula Hanley, come on, put your hands together for her. Hey, that's correct. And for the people who make it happen from the back office of the gospel, who make it all, this would not happen unless because money is needed. Miss Marcia DeKalb, come on, stand up, everybody sees you right there. My brother Howard, God bless you. My brother, God bless you. From who do you work for now? How many companies do you work for? Put your hands together for my people from Bethel Tabernacle Church. This is my assistant pastor, Reverend Dylan. My right hand, my left hand, my all in between, Sister Vanessa Smith, who I can't do nothing without her. My wife who's standing up, God bless you, thank you so much. Brother-in-law, Rabbi Plotkin, thank you so much for, you were trying to help me behind the scenes, making conversations happen. So thank you so much, Deacon Sonia. And give yourself a round of applause, everybody here. Thank you, panelists. Thank you. Listen, I gotta say this. Y'all shocked me tonight. Y'all gave me much more than I could ever expected. Y'all made me do all that talking at first, and y'all just looked at, I should have never said anything. You know, my man Ricky, put your hands in the house. Ricky is a great musician, great historian. He's one of the best in the house. But I want to thank One Crown Heights. Thank you for being here tonight. And from the Congress, Woman Yvette Clark's office. Thank Orlando Ross. Thank you for, listen, the work begins with you. The responsibility begins with you. And unless you decide to be that change agent within your own community, and not think that you should leave it up to a politician, leave it up to somebody else, when the work is not going to get done. The work begins with you. You have to be that change agent. I say to myself all the time, Dave, stand in the conduit. Stand in the gap. Stand where people will see that you're making a difference. Sometimes it's a lonely place. To be the voice of change is a lonely voice. But if you stand there long enough, somebody will hear. Y'all got that? Be the change. And when you become the change, you can demystify the hate. And I said we said a lot of things tonight, so thank you so much. We're doing a lot of things within the Crown Heights community. In August 18th, we're having a 5K race, and I hope you 5K race and walk against the hate, and I pray that you can join me. If you know anything about marathon, come on, I'm looking for you. Every single month, as of next month, we do something in the streets of Crown Heights on, what street are we on? Schenectady and Dean, every single month, the last Saturday of every single month, and it's wonderful. If you like ice cream, come out and get some ice cream. If you like food, come on and get the food, and watch the amount of kids that come out as we have community. And we've been doing this for the last, 4.5 years. So come consistently. And I started Epic Village with money out of my own pockets. And look what God has done, right? So you can do it too. Thank you, Rabbi Bob, which is my inspiration to be greater. So thank you so much. Put your hands together for him. So thank you, everyone. What a phenomenal night. You have something to say, Petula, as we end.
I just wanted to thank the kosher food was from Mendy's on Kingston. So just want to acknowledge that, as well as we have a consultant with us from the Jewish Board for Children and Human Services, Veronica Marshall Thomas. Could you wave? We did mention about trauma, speaking to your therapist. You could see her after for more resources for mental health and counseling.
We're giving away t-shirts, Epic Village t-shirts to everyone. Hopefully we have your size. But thank you. Please get some food. Don't let me take it back home. I have no refrigerator to put it in. Please meet Rabbi Bob Kaplan. He's doing great work across this country. Please meet the panelists. Panelists, I love y'all. Please meet Rabbi Bob Plotkin. But please get a t-shirt. Please get a t-shirt. And I love each and every single one of you. Toyin, let it roll for a few. Panelists, I gotta get a picture with y'all. Don't put on your coat. Gotta get a picture with the panelists.
Oh, I'm not there. I assume yes.
All right, panelists, let's take a quick picture. Rabbi Bob, I need you in this picture. I need to make sure you're seen in this picture. Vanessa, don't worry about it. Just get in the picture. Panelists, let's go. Petula, come on in the picture real quickly. Petula, come on. Marcia, come on quickly, and Heinz. Marcia and Heinz, come on quickly. Let's do this. Come on, Marcia. You gotta get Marcia. Wait, Vanessa. Wait. Javon, come on, take the picture, bro. Thank y'all. Please, everybody, get a t-shirt. Get a t-shirt. Thank you. No, don't worry, but she got it. She gonna take it. There's a reason why I want you. Dan, don't move. I want to speak to you. Panelists, I want to make sure I greet. Make every panelist get a shirt or two. Where's Lenny? Little Lenny and Big Lenny. Y'all know Barry? Y'all know Barry? That's the legend. Okay. Everybody get a shirt. Where's my beautiful panelists? Get a shirt.